There's a verse in Koheles where Shlomo Melech says, Zul umazeh oses elokim es odom. This, countering this is how God made the person. What does that mean? That just as you have a representation of evil in the world, you have an identically have a representation of good. And each representation counters the other. And the question is now, who gets the upper hand? If evil is empowered, good is subordinated to evil. And if good is empowered, evil is subordinated to good. So it's a tug of war. Who was the first representation of good on a personal level to counter the evil? Avram Avinu. Avram, let's talk historically. Before Adam ate of the tree of knowledge, where was God's presence on the terrestrial level? Because the world was pure. Adam was pure. When he ingested that evil, he became spiritually putrefied. Every bit of his being is controlled and dictated by evil. God says, I'm out of here. I will not be associated with this existence. I mean, he willed existence, but in terms of proximity, intimacy, I'm not intimate with this. What is this existence in its totality? It's a representation of evil. In what direction are they headed? In what direction are they inclined? Only negative. At this point, there's no counterforce. Who's going to counter that evil? So when Shlomo says, Zula umazeh osel kim odom, the zel umazeh, the counterforce didn't exist yet. The first counterforce, which was a representation to counter the evil, was Avram Avinu. When Avram came on the scene, all of a sudden, Avram Ho'ivri is here. What's a Ivri? Hu me'ever echad, kol od me'ever hasheni. He's on one side of the equation, the rest of the world's on the other side of the equation. Avram is taking on the world single-handedly. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos, there were 10 generations from Noach to Avram. Avram received credit for all those 10 generations. So we had mentioned that Rabbeinu Yonah in his commentary on Pirkei Avos explains that why did Hashem destroy the world at the time of Noach and the Great Flood? Because for God to maintain this existence, they have to meet a minimal level of accomplishment. And if they don't meet that minimal level of accomplishment, it's not worthwhile for God to keep this world afloat. Therefore, he sank the world with the flood. The world was destroyed. The 10 generations from Noach to Avram, Avram received reward versus all those generations. So Rabbeinu Yonah explains what those 10 generations were supposed to accomplish, to give the world value, they did not accomplish. But Avram was so great, he was able to compensate, he was able to pick up the slack. He made up for the shortfall. Therefore, as a result of that, he received credit for all the generations. So Avram is the representation of what the world should have been at a minimal level, that he picked up the slack. And that's why he's deserving for the reward of all the generations. And therefore, he's the counterforce. But he's a counterforce only as an individual. The counterforce that is able to stand up to the world has to be a nation. Until Sinai, that counterforce didn't exist. It had to be a counterforce that could deal on a global level. The only counterforce that could exist that has that function on a global level is only after Sinai, after Klal Yisrael received the Torah. Klal Yisrael, when we speak about if you save one Jewish life, it's equivalent to the whole world. When did that, until Sinai, what was our classification? We were Noahites. Avram was a Noahide. His neshama was not the neshama of a Jew. The Jewish soul only came about at Sinai. As a result of the connection to God, a metamorphosis happened. We expanded that our soul is the equivalent of the whole world. And the world exists for us. As a result of this, although we're a handful of people relative to the world, we are the counterforce to the world. We are a representation of the world to counter whatever that world is all about. So only then it was Zelu Marzeh Oseh Lukim Adam. Hashem established the counterforce at Sinai when we accepted the Torah. Now, Hashem says at Sinai that you accept my Torah or you'll be buried under the mountain and the world reverts back to pre-existence. Why? But you had Avram, you had Yitzchak, you had Yaakov. They were a counterforce. They counted it to a degree. They were representation, but they weren't sufficient. You need a nation. You need a Klal Yisrael. The only way you could have an appropriate counterforce for that balance, you need a Jewish people have a Jewish soul, which they have representation of God Himself, which only comes through Kabbalat Torah. If you don't receive the Torah, there's no counterforce. If there's no counterforce, the world has no value. The value is to have the counterforce to be able to subordinate the evil. An individual can subordinate evil. Only Klal Yisrael can subordinate the evil. So if there's not going to be a Klal Yisrael, because we don't agree to accept the Torah at Sinai, that means what is our soul? Our soul is no different than the rest of them. So we're individuals. An individual cannot counter them. Therefore, Hashem says, if that's the case, if the whole purpose is that the good should subordinate the good, the bad, the evil, it's not going to be. So if that's the case, we're wasting our time. Everything is an exercise in futility. We find David HaMelech said, Ki l'olam chasto 26 times. Those 26 times, there were 26 generations from time of creation until Kabbalas Torah. The world existed purely on the chesed of Hashem. Ki l'olam chasto. But yet Avram, yet Yitzchak, yet Yaakov was chesed. Why was it God's unlimited chesed? Because the force that was meant to be to counter them, it didn't exist. So if that's the case, why is God maintaining existence? The answer is Ki l'olam chasto. Because since ultimately in the 27th generation, there was going to be a Klal Yisrael at Sinai, God waited. It was worthwhile. He should allow his chesed to maintain existence to keep the world afloat because of what's going to happen at Sinai. Only then, now the world is meant to be as it's meant to be. Now we have Zelu Mazeh Oseh Lukim Adam. Now we could counter them. Until then, we couldn't counter them. That's the counterforce. Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes, I'm saying differently, that it says there were 10 generations from Noach to Avram. Then it says Avram Avinu Kibel Scharken and Kulam. When we speak about how many generations from Noach, Avram is referred to as Avraham. But when we speak about that he received reward, the equivalent of all 10 generations, he's called Avram Avinu. Avram, our forefather. So he asks, it doesn't say from Noach to Avram Avinu there were 10 generations. There were 10 generations from Noach to Avraham. Avram Avinu received credit for all 10 generations. So he says this is what he explains. Avram Avinu, because of what he did, what he inculcated in the soul, he went into the kiln. He was able to withstand the 10 tests. So all his spiritual characteristics were already put in place in himself. Therefore, all his descendants are beneficiaries of his genealogy. And he says, any Jew that has a yearning to go to Israel, to live in Eretz Yisrael, because just as Avram Avinu, when he left Choron, which we read in this parsha, to go to the land that I will show you, and he had a yearning to do that, every Jew has a yearning to go there. That's an indication that his soul is drawing him there. Because our soul is linked to Avram's soul, the Shama. Every Jew who has great mercy, who has compassion, who has shame, who has a capacity to do chesed. Why? Avram Avinu, because we come from Avram Avinu. That's what he did in his time, because he's Avram Avinu. That's what he explained. I explained it differently. He's called Avram Avinu. Why is Avram the founding father of the Jewish people? Because Avram Avinu, because he gave the world meaning, and Hashem kept the world afloat because Avram met the minimal level of worthiness. So why does the world exist? Because Avram picked up the slack. He gave the world its value. As a result of that, he's the founding father of the Jewish people. That's why he was chosen, because that was his level of accomplishment. That's why he's Avram Avinu. But he himself in his own right, even though it's Elokei Avraham, it's Elokei Yitzchak Yaakov. Each of them is the Merkava. Each of them is the location of the Shechina, but they're individuals. To counter the world, you need more than individuals. You need a nation that represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need 600,000 males leaving Egypt to be present at Sinai to receive the Torah. That's what we need. Even Yaakov and his family weren't enough. As righteous, as holy as they were, they're not enough. You need a Klal Yisrael. When we left Egypt, it's B'ni B'chor Yisrael. We were like Hashem's firstborn, but a firstborn is a child. It's not a nation. We became a nation. We say Ata v'chartonu mikol ha'amim. Right? We say in the Tefillah of Yom Tov, Ata v'chartonu mikol ha'amim. Ahavto sonu. You loved us, v'ratzisimonu, you desired us. V'ramamtonu b'kol ha'adoshonos. You elevated us above all the nations. The care of Tonu, right? And you brought us close, Lavodasecha, to your service. Where did all that take place? That's Sinai. So Rambam Tonu b'kol ha'adoshonos, that you elevated us above that, we have the ability to subordinate all the nations. Where did that take place? At Sinai. That's the Zelu Mazer. That's where the counterforce was put in place to have the ability to counter whatever that evil is of the world. If that wouldn't have been put in place, the world doesn't have a chance. Because an individual can't stand up against the mega evil. But if you have a mega Kedusha, which is Klal Yisrael, that one Jew is the equivalent of the whole world, then we talk about having a force that ultimately will subordinate that evil of the world. So where did it start? Elokei Avraham. Avraham was the first representation of that counterfeit force. He gave the world meaning. From him evolved everything that was supposed to happen. We read in this parsha, I will make you into a great people. How did Hashem make him into a great people? He was one person, he had one son, Yitzchak. So when we speak about a great nation, it doesn't mean he personally. What lies within him, the evolution from him is a great nation. That his DNA now is the equivalent of a great nation. It has to evolve, it has to manifest itself. It'll take so many generations. At Sinai, that's when it climaxes. That's when we achieve that level of dimension, of mega greatness.